Here's something most people get wrong. Introversion is not shyness. Those are two completely different things. Shy people are afraid of judgment. Introverts are simply wired differently. Their brains process stimulation more deeply, which means crowds don't energize them, they drain them. If you've ever felt like something was wrong with you for needing quiet after a social event, stay with me, because what I'm about to share might change how you see yourself forever. You know that feeling when you leave a social event, one you actually enjoyed, with people you genuinely like, and the moment you get into your car or close your front door, something in your body just exhales? Not because anything went wrong, not because you didn't have a good time, but because something that was running at high volume finally gets to turn down. And you sit in that quiet for a moment and it doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like coming back to something. Like finding the frequency your nervous system actually runs on after hours of operating on someone else's. If you know that feeling, you've probably also spent a significant portion of your life trying to explain it to people who don't. Or worse, you stopped trying to explain it and started quietly wondering if something was wrong with you for having it in the first place. Because the world has a story about people who need quiet, who think before they speak, who find large groups exhausting rather than energizing, who prefer one deep conversation to 10 surface ones, who sometimes need an entire day alone after a weekend of being around people, not because they're depressed or antisocial or damaged, but simply because that's how their system resets. The story the world tells about these people is not a flattering one. They get called shy, standoffish, cold, difficult, too serious. Not a team player, too much in their head, not present enough. The story implies that the problem is them, that if they just tried harder, opened up more, pushed through the discomfort, they would eventually become the kind of person who finds noise and crowds and constant interaction easy. That story is wrong. Not slightly wrong, fundamentally, documentably, neurologically wrong. And the gap between what the world says about this personality type and what the science actually shows is wider than almost any other area of human psychology. What we're actually talking about is introversion. Not shyness, which is a different thing entirely rooted in fear of social judgment. Not antisocial behavior, which involves an active aversion to people. Not depression, not social anxiety, not emotional unavailability. Introversion is a neurological orientation, a specific and well-documented way that certain brains process stimulation. And it is one of the most misunderstood traits in the entire landscape of human psychology. There are at least 15 things that research has established about how introverted brains actually work, and almost none of them match the story that gets told. Here's what the science actually says. The first and most foundational fact is one that restructures everything else. Introverted brains are not less stimulated by the world. They are more stimulated. Neuroscientist Elaine Aron, building on earlier work by psychologist Hans Eysenck, documented through multiple studies that introverted nervous systems have a higher baseline level of cortical arousal than extroverted ones. What this means in plain terms is that the introvert's brain is already running hotter, processing more, registering more input at rest than the extroverted brain is. This is why social environments, with their multiple simultaneous conversations, shifting dynamics, sensory input, and social demands, push an introverted nervous system past its optimal functioning point relatively quickly. It isn't that the introvert finds people boring or threatening. It's that the introvert's brain is already doing so much with the information it's receiving that adding more input doesn't energize the system. It overloads it. The extroverted brain, running at a lower baseline arousal, genuinely needs external stimulation to reach its optimal state. The introverted brain is already there and then some. This is why the recharging is not a choice or a preference. It is a neurological requirement. When an introvert retreats to quiet after sustained social interaction, the brain is not sulking or being antisocial. It is performing essential maintenance, processing the enormous volume of information it took in, restoring the system to baseline, making space for the next engagement. Calling this antisocial is like calling sleep antisocial. It is the thing the system needs to function well. The second fact follows directly from the first, and it is one of the most consistently misread aspects of introverted behavior. Introverts are not quieter because they have less to say. They are quieter because they process before they speak rather than while they speak. Psychologist Gerald Matthews at the University of Cincinnati has documented this pattern extensively. Introverts tend to engage in more thorough internal processing before contributing to a conversation, which means their verbal output comes later, is more carefully considered, and often goes deeper than the extrovert's more rapid-fire verbal processing. In fast-moving group conversations, this pattern means the introvert is frequently still processing the third point when the group has moved to the seventh. They are not checked out. They are actually more engaged with what was said. They are just engaging with it internally in the way their brain does its best work. The cost of this in social settings is real and worth naming. Introverts often leave conversations with their best thoughts unshared, not because they didn't have them, but because the format didn't create space for the pace at which they think. This is frequently misread as disinterest, aloofness, or a lack of engagement, when it is actually the opposite. The introvert who said the least in the meeting has often thought the most about it. The third fact is one that directly contradicts the most common cultural stereotype. Introverts are not uniformly bad at or uninterested in social interaction. They are selective about it in ways that are neurologically driven rather than socially motivated. Research by psychologist William Fleeson at Wake Forest University found that introverts are fully capable of behaving in extroverted ways, being warm, engaging, talkative, charismatic, and many do so regularly. What the research also found is that this kind of behavioral extroversion has a specific cost for introverts that it does not have for actual extroverts. It draws on cognitive and emotional resources in a way that genuine extroversion does not, because it requires the introverted nervous system to operate against its natural grain. This is not weakness. It is the neurological equivalent of being naturally left-handed and writing with your right. You can do it. You might even do it well. But it takes more effort, and over time that effort accumulates. The fourth fact is one that speaks directly to the quality of connection that introverts offer. Introverts tend toward fewer but significantly deeper relationships than extroverts. And this is not a social limitation. It is a reflection of how the introverted brain prioritizes and processes interpersonal connection. Research on introvert social preferences consistently shows that introverts derive satisfaction from depth of connection rather than breadth of social contact. A meaningful 2-hour conversation with one person provides the kind of social fulfillment that a party with 50 people does not. This is not because introverts are antisocial. It is because the introvert's brain is processing interpersonal information at such depth that a genuine connection with one person is a rich and complete social experience. While the surface-level contact of large group interaction leaves the system both overstimulated and paradoxically understimulated. Too much noise, not enough signal. The fifth fact is the one that tends to surprise people most, and it has significant implications for how introverts are perceived and utilized in professional settings. Introverts are not less effective leaders than extroverts. In many contexts, they are more effective. A landmark study by researcher Adam Grant at the Wharton School found that introverted leaders consistently outperformed extroverted leaders when managing proactive, highly motivated team members. Because introverted leaders are naturally more inclined to listen deeply, consider multiple perspectives before acting, and create space for the ideas of others to emerge. The extroverted leader's tendency toward rapid decision-making and high verbal dominance, which works well in some contexts, can inadvertently suppress the contributions of engaged team members. The introverted leader's quieter, more receptive style does the opposite. The sixth fact is one that reshapes the entire narrative of introversion as a social disadvantage. Introverts are among the most cognitively thorough processors of emotional information in the human population. Psychologist Elaine Aron's research on what she calls the highly sensitive person, a category that significantly overlaps with introversion, documents that introverted sensitive individuals process emotional and sensory information more deeply than the average person, notice subtleties that others miss, and make connections between pieces of information that less thorough processors overlook. This depth of processing is not a burden in disguise. It is a genuine cognitive capability that produces real advantages in creative work, in problem-solving and the quality of interpersonal understanding, and in the ability to anticipate consequences that more impulsive processing styles miss. The seventh fact addresses one of the most damaging myths about introversion, which is the idea that introverts don't like people. What introverts often don't like, and this is a significant distinction, is the performance aspect of certain social contexts. The small talk, the code switching, the management of multiple superficial interactions simultaneously, the requirement to be expressive and engaging in ways that feel artificial relative to how the introvert actually thinks and communicates. This is not misanthropy. It is a preference for authentic interaction over performed interaction, and it is rooted in the same depth of processing orientation that makes introverts excellent listeners, loyal friends, and thoughtful partners. The introvert who seems withdrawn at the networking event is frequently the same person who will stay up until 2 in the morning, having a conversation that genuinely matters. The issue was never people. It was always the format. The eighth fact is one that connects introversion directly to a broader pattern of how the nervous system was shaped by early experience. Many people who identify as introverts were children who learned early that their inner world, their thoughts, imagination, and internal processing, was rich enough to be satisfying on its own. whether through temperament, family environment, the experience of spending significant time alone, or simply the natural development of a particular cognitive style. These children developed a well-furnished inner life that gave them a form of company that didn't require external input. The adult introvert who genuinely enjoys solitude is not suffering from a deficit of social connection. They are drawing on an interior resource that was developed early and has been deepening ever since. Solitude for the introvert is not the absence of company. It is a specific and valued form of it. The ninth fact speaks to something that introverts often feel but rarely see named accurately. Introversion is not the same as low confidence, low self-esteem, or fear. Many introverts are deeply self-assured individuals who simply express that self-assurance inwardly rather than outwardly. The cultural equation of confidence, with verbal expressiveness and social dominance. The idea that the person speaking loudest and most often in the room is the most confident person in the room is a cultural bias rather than a psychological truth. Research consistently shows no meaningful correlation between introversion and low self-esteem once the cultural pressure to be extroverted is accounted for. The introvert who doesn't volunteer opinions in group settings is not necessarily less certain of their opinions. They may simply not feel that every room is the right room for every thought. The 10th fact is one that has been documented across multiple decades of creativity research. Introversion is consistently and significantly associated with creative output. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow states, those periods of deep, absorbed, productive focus that generate the most creative and meaningful work, found that introverts access flow states more easily and more frequently than extroverts because flow requires exactly what the introverted brain naturally seeks: quiet, focused, uninterrupted engagement with a single subject. The correlation between introversion and creative achievement across fields, literature, science, music, visual art, philosophy, is not a coincidence. It is the natural output of brains that find deep, solitary engagement rewarding rather than effortful. The 11th fact addresses the introvert's relationship with overstimulation, which is frequently misread as anxiety or depression. When an introverted nervous system is pushed past its threshold, too much social input, too long without recovery time, too many environments requiring high performance, it produces symptoms that can look clinically significant but are actually the system's distress signal for a different kind of need. Irritability, withdrawal, difficulty concentrating, emotional flatness. These are the introvert's nervous system communicating that it has been operating above capacity and needs restoration, not stimulation. The introvert who becomes quieter and more withdrawn during high-demand periods is not falling apart. They are trying to repair. Understanding this distinction matters enormously, both for introverts trying to understand their own responses and for the people who care about them. The 12th fact is perhaps the most counterintuitive finding in introversion research. Introverts, despite their reputation for preferring solitude, are often more attuned to the emotional states of the people around them than extroverts are. The same depth of processing orientation that makes social environments overstimulating also makes the introvert extraordinarily good at reading subtle social and emotional signals of the shift in someone's tone, the tension in a conversation that hasn't been named yet, the feeling of a room that isn't matching the words being spoken in it. Introverts often know what's happening in an interpersonal dynamic before anyone has said anything about it out loud. This is not a mystical quality. It is the predictable output of a brain that processes interpersonal information more thoroughly than average. The 13th fact is one that recasts the introvert's apparent social discomfort in an important light. Many introverts don't find social interaction itself draining. They find inauthentic social interaction draining. There is a meaningful and documented difference in how introverts respond to genuine connection versus performance-based social interaction, and it shows up in physiological measures as well as self-reported experience. A conversation that involves real honesty, real curiosity, and real depth often leaves an introvert feeling more energized than depleted, because their system is built for exactly that quality of engagement. It is the performance, the management of impression, the maintenance of social surface that is the drain, not the people. The 14th fact is one that holds a particular kind of importance for introverts who spent childhood in educational and social environments designed almost entirely around extroverted norms. The experience of spending years being evaluated, rewarded, and accepted based on behaviors that do not reflect one's natural orientation, speaking up more, being more socially active, participating more vocally, leaves a specific kind of residue. Many adult introverts carry a deeply installed belief that who they naturally are is not quite enough, that they have been falling short of some standard of social performance since childhood. That belief was installed by environments that misread them. It does not reflect any genuine deficit. It reflects the mismatch between a neurological orientation and a set of cultural expectations designed around a different one. The 15th and final fact is the one that reframes everything that came before it. Introversion is not a phase. It is not a stage of development that resolves into extroversion with enough social practice or exposure. It is not a response to trauma, though it can be intensified by it. It is a stable neurological trait, one of the most stable personality traits that psychological research has identified, with a significant hereditary component and consistent expression across a lifetime. The introvert who is still preferring quiet evenings and meaningful conversations over large parties at 50 is not someone who never learned to enjoy social life. They are someone who has spent 50 years being genuinely, consistently themselves. That is not a problem to be solved. It is a self to be understood, and here is what sits at the heart of all of this. The introvert reading or listening to this has not been falling short of some human standard. They have been operating as a specific and coherent neurological type in a world that built most of its social infrastructure around a different one. That is a real and legitimate difficulty. It is also not the whole story. Because the same wiring that makes the introvert's experience of crowds and noise and social performance effortful is the wiring that makes their inner life rich. Their connections deep, their thinking thorough, their attention to the world around them unusually precise. The quiet that others misread as emptiness is not emptiness. It is a full and active inner world that simply doesn't announce itself. It never needed to. If something in this landed in a way that felt accurate, not just interesting, but true in the way that things are true when they describe something you've been living without quite having the language for, there is more here. The psychology of how introverts connect, how they work, how they lead, how they love, and how they find their way in a world that keeps asking them to be louder. It goes deeper than 15 facts. There is a whole architecture underneath all of this, and if you're curious about what it looks like when you follow it all the way down, stay close. There is more here for you.